in editing. I've submitted several op-ed pieces. Other than that, my main work right now is trying to get the research paper done on the Israel-Palestine issue, and in the context of ethno-nationalism.
Yeah. Okay. Is would that be something you would wanna give a summary about um in the podcast or session we're having?
Yeah, I'm starting from the just against the context of thinkers like Mahmoud Mamdani and can't even
Yep.
remember her name. Anyway, whose basic idea is that the root of the problem is the idea of the nation as the state of a particular people. Like France is the state of the French people, and so on, because it others everybody else of any other ethnicity who lives within the territory of that nation. Yeah, the official nationality of every nation state actually is just artificially constructed, and it's constructed in a way that inevitably requires the suppression of many other ethnic identities in the same territory. So, like with the French national identity, is just based on the dialect of a fairly small number of people in the area around Paris, and creating a national identity from that involved erasing and suppressing the identities of Provençal speakers, Bretons, and so forth, and other ethnic identities all over the country. And same thing in Spain, making Castilian the basis of standard Spanish and erasing Aragonese, Catalan, Basque, and so forth. And in the case of Israel, the whole idea of creating a Jewish ethno state obviously involves othering the previous Palestinian population there, and not only that, the official like new Jewish identity of Israelis based on resurrecting Hebrew, which was previously just a liturgical language for over 2,000 years, involves suppressing actual Jewish ethnicities like the Yiddish spoken by Ashkenazi Jews, or the Ladino spoken by Sephardic Jews, or de-Arabizing the Mizrahi Jews, and forcing them to adopt an artificial identity.
I
Uh,
see.
these people, I mean, their basic argument is that any nation state should simply be the state of all the people who happen to live in that territory, not have an official identity. Its functions should be purely administrative, serving the basic infrastructural needs of all the people there.
Yeah,
That nationality is a private affair.
true. What are your thoughts on um the idea that maybe a country can be not limited to like a locality, like a physical location, but you know, be across the globe?
Distributed,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that sounds like David Deogarte's idea of files, among other things, distributed networked states with made up of local iterations or cantons all over the world.
Do you think
And
that's a
in regard to the nation state, I mean, I'm ultimately going to argue that I'm going to take Mamdani's argument and Nandita Sharma's argument, that's her name, I just remembered it, a step farther and say that not only should the nation state not be an ethno state, but it should be one state at the most. Uh, it's better to devolve the state itself into less state like administrative platforms.
cool? So speaking of platforms, um, with the technology that's available today, it's basically maybe possible to build like new and better systems. I just wanted to tap your wisdom and knowledge regarding some of the key concepts that you seem to be about, like peer production, mutualism, decentralization, um, that sort of thing, like economic justice, and to see if there's any like ideas on things that we can actually build today or do today to make a lasting positive impact on the world, like a maybe like a platform or some kind of a app or system uh way of doing things. um
Yeah, what you mentioned, deterritorializing the state and replacing it with distributed networks. It occurred to me that there's a flip side to that, which is administrative functions that are tied to territory, like electrical grids, local sewage composting systems, and other local utilities, and so forth. And that the one is a way of connecting the other. Uh, the one the network, and the other is the nodes of that network.
cool, gotcha. um what do you see is lacking today in the way things have been set up in the world? If there's
The
like
way
one,
that
yeah, like if there's
the
a
way that
couple of things you
what's
can.
set up.
Like the way the world works, the government, the financial system. Like, what do you think is lacking or broken, or which areas can we focus on as technologists to help solve some of the world's problems? Like,
Well, the primary problems, I think, are just artificial scarcity and artificial abundance, and they both exist, and they both, in their own ways, create unnecessary inefficiencies and make life more expensive and more laborious for the average person. And it's all done in order to enrich a few people at their expense. So, what we should be doing is eliminating both the artificial scarcity and the artificial abundance. Ideas, things like ideas and credit should be free. Uh, Natural resource inputs should be priced at the actual cost of obtaining them rather than being artificially subsidized uh, to the corporations that use them. and land should be uh, available for use rather than being held out of use by absentee landlords.
I see.
It
um,
would, and both of those things would make life less costly for the average person because even the artificial abundance of production inputs that corporations get uh, are subsidized by somebody and they result in all kinds of waste production that if it were eliminated would make things less costly for the average person.
I see. All right.
It would, if we did away with both artificial scarcity and artificial abundance, that would eliminate waste production like planned obsolescence, car culture, and so forth, and make comfortable subsistence much cheaper for the average person.
True. Have you heard of this project called the Venus Project? Um,
I've heard of it. It's and all just just generally know of it as being sort of some sort of an alternative technology project, like a lot of others. I don't know any specifics about it though.
yeah, it's somewhat like a blueprint. That's I think it's done in a way that's relatively easy for the layman to understand, although execution is a bit tricky. Um, um, yeah, so I was just thinking like all these things that you mentioned, um, what's the best way to get this information out to people who can actually do something about it? Like, do you reckon a wiki with all these ideas would be the best way, like a collaborative wiki, something like that?
Yeah, that's in its own way as big a problem as the problems we already discussed of artificial scarcity and artificial abundance is just the informational problem because there are so many different organizations duplicating each other's work. And just within the alternative economics field itself, there's something like what C.P. Snow called the two cultures problem, where half the alt economy movement is the soft hippie types that are, into like cooperatives, organic farming, and so forth. And then there are the hard types that are into open source hardware and software, micro manufacturing, and so forth. And those two sides don't talk to each other a whole lot or develop the potential synergies between them. And then there's all sorts of different umbrella organizations like the Solidarity Economy Network, the various municipalist organizations like in Barcelona and Madrid or Cooperation Jackson, and so forth. And there's really not enough effort engaged in just making them all aware of each other. And it seems to me like creating a new wiki or something like that would just add to the existing Tower of Babel problem. I'm not sure what the answer is as far as it's connecting everybody with
Mm.
each other, but it's certainly a problem. I suppose it's one of those things that will only be solved when circumstances are such that the new technologies have to take off just as a matter of necessity, and that will drive them together. But until then, it just just seems like a problem with no real answer.
Okay.
At one time, I was optimistic about the Solidarity Economy Network because, or what's the other thing, the World Social Forum, a lot of different efforts like that because they included so many different organizations and sub movements within their umbrella. So maybe making those movements aware of each other would help.
Okay.
But other than that, at just the local level might be the place to integrate them, getting local municipalist projects to integrate everything they find useful into their own local economics project,
Okay. Is it important
regardless.
for, thanks. Is it important for communities to engage with each other, or, is it better if they just focus on building and interacting with their own communities or networks?
Well, if nothing else, it helps accelerate the adoption of the ideas for them to be aware of each other and be able to adopt each other's best practices. And, to some extent, just being able to scale things up where there are economies of scale so that they can might be more efficient when they're adopted by a number of communities at the same time, especially when it comes to things like exchange.
All right. Um, all right. So the main idea that we're trying to build is, I mentioned before, like it's this bartering and community exchange app. Um, do you think it's still a valid idea? Like, we're just trying to see if it's the correct direction that we're going in, like bartering, like peer-to-peer exchange. I mean, you talked about some concepts like peer production. I was wondering if it's
Yeah,
somewhat similar and related. Um,
yeah, I definitely think some sort of peer-to-peer money system or mutual exchange system is a necessary part of the mix. Credit system and so on. Just reading through the material you sent me about Aragon, I still disagree with the basic proof of work concept or the idea that money is something that should have to have a cost or require work to be produced. But in general, I think the idea of community or peer-to-peer money of some sort is very important, and it's very important for people to have a way of organizing exchange and credit in a way that's easily available to people without resources and bring their various skills together without depending on credit from the capitalist banking system.
cool. That answers a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, what we kind of envision right now is something like a token, which is basically a tokenized fraction of the goods or service that is offered or traded. So
Yeah.
might try and expand on that a bit. But yeah, thanks for sharing a bit. Um,
Oh, you mentioned the Venus Project. Have you ever heard of Factor E Farm or open source ecology?
no, uh, factory e farm.
Factor, it's like three separate words. Factor E Farm
Okay.
with two spaces, and the farm is actually their demo site. The organization itself is called Open Source Ecology. Uh, and
Okay.
their original demo site, where most of the research has originally taken place, is up in Kansas City area. Um, but they're an open source hardware project. They've created an entire ecosystem of dozens of different kinds of open source machines that they refer to as the Global Village Construction Set. It includes open source micro manufacturing machinery, like they've got their own open their own designs for open source 3D printers, laser cutters, routers, drill presses, and so forth, and more expensive things like smelting furnaces, uh, wire straightening machines, printable circuitry, just all kinds of production stuff like that. Basically, everything you'd need for an entire micro manufacturing shop. They all cost a pretty small fraction of what their commercial equivalents would cost. And they're a modular ecosystem where the same modular components are reused in as many of the machines as possible. Like a whole lot of the different machines have the same power transmission module. Uh, and besides the micro manufacturing machinery, they also have construction machinery like a compressed earth brick machine, sawmill, uh, glass production equipment. They've also got stuff like grinding mill, bakery, and stuff like that. So it's pretty much just there's a farm tractor and other modular farm equipment. It's just pretty much an entire local economy, and
Oh,
all of their hardware is open source, and all the specs are publicly available. I think there's been a proliferation of some other small projects around the world that are producing the same designs. The guy that originally founded it is his name is Marcin Jakubowski, from originally from Poland.
cool. Thanks for the info. Seems interesting. It seems like it's a system for sharing um tools and equipment, um, which is I think one of the concepts that's talked about in the Venus project as well. Um, that's cool.
Yeah, it would be really great if just we were talking about making people aware of each other. It would be great just to put that project in touch with local efforts like Cooperation Jackson or the Evergreen Project in Cleveland, so that they could do a better job of incorporating micro manufacturing into their own local efforts, or if they could use that machinery to set up micro manufacturing shops, say in Barcelona, where so much of the municipalist effort's going on.
Cool. For the people just listening in who are new, is micro manufacturing sort of like a decentralized way of manufacturing and basically just
Yeah,
manufacturing? Okay.
yeah. It's if you think of what they do in places like uh, the Emilia Romagna local manufacturing district economy in Italy, or a lot of the job shops in China that produce on contract, and you think of the ways that they differ from traditional mass production. Micro manufacturing just takes things even further in the same direction. Like the Emilia Romagna economy. Well, just by way of background, mass production is based on the idea of using extremely large scale, expensive, product specific machinery, and then engaging in extremely long production runs with the same dies in order to minimize unit costs and minimize overhead, and to amortize the original outlay costs of that capital. So you wind up with having to undertake extremely long production runs without regard to any pre-existing demand. And that means you have to have a society organized around finding ways to guarantee the consumption of those streams of output. So you have planned obsolescence, you have military industrial complexes, and so forth. The kind of micro manufacturing they do in Emilia Romagna, on the other hand, is based on a craft model of production where you use much smaller scale general purpose machinery that can do any number of things, just basic tools like routers, printers, cutters, and so forth, so that you can quickly switch from producing one good to producing other kinds of goods as the orders come in. And because the machinery is so cheap, comparatively speaking, there's virtually zero overhead. And because you're just constantly switching between different production runs as the orders come in, there's no need for large inventories. There's no need for expensive mass marketing campaigns or warehousing or long supply chains and so forth. It's a lean system based on demand pull. And the kind of micro manufacturing they do with a small open source tabletop machinery takes things even further in that direction. So you can just have a local community producing most of the things that it needs in that one shop, just constantly switching from manufacturing one thing to manufacturing another. For a couple of weeks, they might be producing small electronic electrical delivery vehicles. Then they might switch over to producing washing machines and so forth, or making furniture or whatever, just as the need arises. Or making, and they can make open source product designs that are designed with modular components for durability, so that they can just be endlessly repaired by replacing one component instead of replacing the entire thing. So that's getting rid of planned obsolescence and waste production.
Very interesting. Um, uh, have you written or have any opinions about the concept of crowdfunding? Um, Maybe like how a crowdfunding, like some sort of decentralized crowdfunding platform could help these like mini projects, these peer production type of projects. Would that be a
Yeah,
good?
I did think I discussed it at least in passing in a book I wrote called homebrew industrial revolution, where I discussed it in the context of reducing the transaction costs of raising investment capital and making it easier for small projects to aggregate capital without depending on convincing a bank or an angel investor or a venture capitalist to give them the money.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. That's great. That's one of the focuses that we're trying to do. Um, Tell me about the Center for Stateless Society. Like, what are you still active there, or what's the recent it's been happening with them uh and any
Yeah,
recent.
I typically write several op-eds a month, and I've I've written several research papers over the past couple of years. We've got other people who also write op-eds. Like I mentioned, we've got a sort of a backlog when it comes to editing because we've got very limited editorial staff and they have other commitments. So we could always use editing help. That's one reason that we have we don't. One reason we don't have more stuff appearing on our website more frequently. The website is c4ss.org, by the way, for anyone who wants to read our material. Just by way of general background, it's an anarchist think tank that publishes commentary and research papers. It's a multi-tendency anarchist project. I think most of the people there would call themselves left-wing market anarchists of one kind or another, but we're not unanimously so by any chance. I don't call myself a market anarchist anymore, just an anarchist without adjectives, but we're pretty open to the sorts of people we're interested in publishing.
Sure. Can you just quickly, if you don't mind, touch on the concept of anarchy? I mean, we probably covered this in the past episode, but for some people, it seems to have maybe a media influence, negative
Uh,
stigma. Can you just clear this up, like, to for those who are listening in?
I guess the classic definition would be Kropotkin's from the 1911 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, where he wrote the article on anarchism, and he just said it's a movement for replacing coercive state functions with voluntary associations of free people. That covers a whole lot of ground and leaves openings for a whole lot of different schools of anarchism, whether it be libertarian socialist or libertarian communist movements like Kropotkin himself, or council communism, or anarcho-syndicalism, or more market-oriented projects like the individualist anarchists in America, who were a kind of libertarian socialist as well as being for free markets. I think I think most uh, most schools of anarchism from the traditional anarchist movement would deny that anarcho-capitalism is genuinely anarchist because capitalist economic relations are authoritarian in their own way, and I think obviously we would all exclude things like national anarchism, but aside from things like the enforcement of absentee property claims, most of us would be open to just about any form of social organization that people agree on, where nobody has a gun backing them up, imposing it on other people. But other than that, the main difference between anarchists is how they view the transition period, whether they see it as being evolutionary or revolutionary or whatever. But most of the media portrayals, make it sound like we desire something like Somalia or Haiti or Iraq after 2004, and uh, that's not true at all. I don't think anyone, or at least very few people, want to just instantaneously disappear the state and leave some kind of a vacuum with nothing to replace it. We see the future society as something that's already in process of being organized through 1,000 little different kinds of seeds and counter institutions and local projects that are currently growing up within the present system. And as the older system decays, we expect these other seeds to keep growing and coalesce together until they finally supplant the old system. Some of us think there may necessarily be some violence involved in the rupture process. And some schools of anarchism see it as being necessary on our part to initiate the violence, and others of us don't see it as necessary for us to initiate the violence. We just want to keep on doing our current work of building the successor system and be prepared to fight back when the if the it ever reaches the point where the present system tries to strangle it in its cradle.
Interesting. And how long do you think this rupture, in terms of timeline, will occur? Like 10 years, 50 years, 100 years? Do you have an estimate?
I'm, I'm thinking, probably in the order of 2 or 3 generations, but I think it's a process comparable of the evolution from feudalism into capitalism, and I don't know that if there will ever be a purely stateless society. In a lot of ways, it's more of a goal to move towards than any kind of end state that will necessarily exist in 100% purity. But I think we're definitely evolving in a direction where, just generally speaking, hierarchical and authoritarian or centralized organizations will be replaced by decentralized and self-managed and networked way of doing things. And states and large corporations will find it increasingly costly and difficult to enforce their authority against self-managed efforts.
Beautiful, well said. Um, so one of the things I'm working on is writing a manifesto of sorts of these general concepts so that whatever we build is sort of like a shadow of this manifesto. would you have any tips on how to write such a manifesto or what should go in it, or would you be even interested to help uh
Oh,
co-author?
sure. Yeah. Just generally speaking, I guess you just got to thoroughly cover the entire range of topics. Maybe have separate sections for the manufacturing economy, agriculture, money and credit, things like support platforms and utilities, and that sort of thing. And have material on what you view as the transition process and what are the best forms of organization and activism and so forth. I mean, those are just all the things that are generally covered by any political ideology.
Oh. Are there any materials or books or resources I should be referencing or maybe checking out that you can think of apart from your stuff?
Okay, I oh yeah, I don't want to recommend it as my uh, work, but I think if you just look at the materials I've aggregated in the footnotes to the book uh, Exodus, that's in the second part on that has different chapters and sections on the nuts and bolts of the counter economy. I've cited a whole lot of sources there on different local municipalist movements, micro manufacturing movements, community alternatives to policing, and so forth. You could probably just mine the footnotes for a lot of different helpful sources. That's how I got to a lot of this stuff by reading. In the late 90s, I came across a book called Human Scale by Kirkpatrick Sale, and it was just chapters on a whole wide range of different topics, all involving political, economic, social, energy, and so forth, decentralization of one sort or another. And I just went through his end notes, uh, following all of those for further research, and then followed those sources to other sources and so forth. And that was basically the beginning of my intellectual journey into anarchism.
Very interesting. That's yeah. It's always fascinates me like how much material you have written. Um, and I've always been curious about what drives you to be interested in this topic and to write and devote so much of your time to it. Also, I'm interested to understand like who um is the primary audience of your material. Uh, yeah.
To be honest, I don't usually even think of my primary audience. I'm usually just obsessed with some problem that I'm interested in and want to write about. Uh, but I think in the back of my mind, I've always got the idea that I'm writing about either post-capitalist transition or the nuts and bolts building blocks of post-capitalist society and trying to further that project. Either that or I'm writing about something that pissed me off, where somebody, some right winger, wrote something on economics that I want to tear to pieces. So sometimes I'm also motivated by anger, I guess. But oh, you're asking about sources. There's stuff like if you go back just on economics and manufacturing stuff, there's a lot of people like Ralph Borsodi, Colin Ward. Uh, uh, Drawing a blank. coming up with some other names. There's just a lot of people like that have written on decentralized economics and uh, uh,
Cool.
manufacturing theory.
Cool. I'll definitely do some research. Cool. Yeah, it's great topics to be focusing on, I think, at this time of humanity. Um, have you watched The Matrix? I'm sure you have, right? Too.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I've watched the first one like a billion times. The second and third installments I watched once, and I didn't much care for. I mean, I think just the original first installment of The Matrix is just wonderful as a standalone movie. If nothing else, it hooked me just because it had a quote from Noam Chomsky at the end, and it had music by Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, true.
Need to watch
Um,
that again.
yeah, it's a great movie. I'm wondering whether another movie like The Matrix is needed, or an update uh a couple of decades.
Yeah, what was that for? Recently been a fourth installment. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I think it's probably like the anime version or something like that. Um, yeah, um, I don't think I've seen it either. But yeah, one of my uh dreams or life goals is to make a movie. Maybe it should be something about the future state, the post-capitalist vision, something like that. Could be interesting.
Have you ever read Walk Away by Cory Doctorow?
Nope, can't say I have. Walk away.
Oh man, all I can say is if you read only one work of fiction uh, about a future society, that's the one to read. I can't recommend it highly enough.
What's his name again?
Cory Doctorow, he's a science fiction writer.
Doctor Rope. Okay.
He's written a lot of books, and a huge part of what he's written is on his new near future sci-fi with post-scarcity themes of one kind or another. But Walk Away is just in a class by itself.
I see. All right, I'm gonna order the book. Uh,
Or just get a PDF on Library Genesis.
Library Genesis. Okay, cool. Do
Yeah,
you
it's
have
it's
any? Yeah.
yeah. You heard you've have you heard of Library Genesis?
No, I might have. I think I've come across it before.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you should definitely add that to your bookmarks because it's a book download site, and virtually any academic book, I'd say at least 95% of them, you can find a PDF to download. And if you click uh, search on academic journals, they've got virtually everything from Science Hub archived there.
Nice.
So yeah, I my other than when I moved 7 years ago, or no, 9 years ago anyway, I had about 1,000 hard copy books in my library, and I doubt if I've added 100 since then because all the books I've acquired since then, several thousand of them are just free PDFs I grabbed online, and Library Genesis has been my go-to source. Just
Cool.
just Google Library Genesis because their local servers are always being shut down by copyright enforcement. But they're one of those sites like WikiLeaks. It's got so many different mirrors around the world that can never really be shut down. You just use Google to find the most currently available mirror sites.
Yep, gotcha. Nice, very very good resource. Cool. Is there any do you have any plans to make any of your books into audiobooks? Um,
Uh, I think someone may have done an audio book of mutualist political economy some time ago. I forget her name though, and forget if it was ever put up for sale. I don't intend to do it myself because I don't have a good reading voice at all, and I don't know if anyone else would be willing to do it for free just as a volunteer project. So
well, if I come across anyone, I'll let you know.
I appreciate it.
Cool. Um, anyway, we're coming quite close to the hour. Was there any topics you wanted to talk about, or what's exciting for you in the next coming months or year? What are you most excited about going going forward? Any plans? Hello? Is the audio working?
On besides just the theory of ethno-nationalism, on the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I can't recommend highly enough uh, books like on Pape's ethnic cleansing of Palestine. It just basically dispel all of the myths put out by apologists for Israel and show how it was very much an ethnic cleansing project from the beginning and involved large scale crimes against humanity. I'm also reading a lot of stuff on just basic things like two-state solutions versus one-state solution versus no-state solutions, or soft state solutions where you have an Israeli state and a Palestinian state, but they have very porous borders and liberal migration policies, and they engage in uh, confidence building measures aimed at reducing tensions in the future, and possibly evolving into a confederal or one state system. It's all really fascinating. When I finish this, I'll probably go back primarily to the Money Project, and I'll be reading a lot more on history of monetary systems, a lot of the work. I'll be checking up the sources that David Graeber referenced in Debt, and reading a lot of critiques of the current financial system by people like Michael Hudson. So I'm
Fantastic.
kind of impatient to get back to that as well.
Cool. All right. So just a quick last question. Since the topic of Palestine is kind of in everyone's minds at the moment, what do you think are some of the things the average person can do or to either help or to understand the topic better?
Well, just I would read. Let me Google real quick. I can't remember the author of the book I'm thinking of here. Okay, it's the 100 Years' War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. Uh,
Shoot.
and the other one is The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pape. The one is an Arab and the other is an Israeli, but they're both extremely heavy documented. And if you read either one of those, you will never see another argument from an apologist from Israel on social media without immediately being able to blow it to pieces.
Oh,
Other than that, I suppose just reaching out to other people on social media and trying to educate them about it, and putting pressure on elected officials not to sell arms to Israel, to divest, that sort of thing. Just just pretty much the standard stuff.
oh. Well,
And
excellent.
to some extent, I think it's necessary also to address anti-Semitism by some defenders of Palestine. People need to stop conflating Zionism with Judaism, and I think the minority of people who actually expect Israeli Jews born in Israel to move somewhere else are very wrong-headed, because there are millions of people uh, born there through no fault of their own, and whatever solution is finally arrived at is going to have to accommodate everyone who currently lives in Palestine. It's going to have to, give reparations and land to the Palestinian people, and it's going to have to uh, allow a right of return to Palestinian refugees, but it's also going to have to accommodate the right of Israelis who were born in Israel to continue living there as citizens of a multi-ethnic state with equal rights. There's really, I very firmly believe, from the river to the sea, but the Palestine who lives there right now, Arabs and Jews, with the equal rights for everybody.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for all your input and wisdom and knowledge, Kevin. Um, let
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, no worries. Keen to get your word out, and hopefully someone will pick it up, and more people will act on um uh what's possible to do now to build a better future. But thank you so much for your work, and till the next time. Cool.
Well, thanks. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, take care. Cheers, Kevin.